Since sports became a lucrative venture, bodies in charge of various sports organizations have frequently come up with ways to stay relevant. One strategy that rarely fails is the creation of superstars by investing in certain talents and propping them to a point that even when a team is on a losing streak, the excitement of watching your favorite superstar play keeps you tuned in and collectively keeps the sport relevant. While sports can be regarded as a male-dominated industry due to its high-level physical demands, and in most cases it requires a fair amount of testosterone to survive in it. So, as female sports started gaining mainstream traction, the feeling of watching women do things that we were used to seeing men do regularly was strange. But the fact that it offered something different created excitement. Female football was good enough to watch for the most part, and yes, there were comedy moments provided mostly by the goalkeepers, who sometimes viewed long-range shots as actual torpedoes and would quickly channel their inner dodgeball spirit then act accordingly. That and other expected errors, with a fair amount of good football, kept the games interesting, and over the years we've seen significant improvements. Plus, the female game has produced some superstars along the way, players like Mia Hamm, Abby Wambach, Brigitte Prince, and Marta, to name a few, helped to create enough hype around the game that we would want the Women's World Cup to happen every 2 years. Problem was, if it wasn't a World Cup or Olympic year, no one really remembered female football because the men's games were constantly in our faces. Normally, everyone prefers the original version of anything. In the case of basketball, I had hoped to see the WNBA function at the level of the women's football, but boy was I disappointed. The WNBA was giving netball vibes, and you'd have to pay me to watch a netball match. Talking about the WNBA giving netball vibe, take a look at this and spot the difference. In football, the women looked like they enjoy playing the game and were putting in work to get fans more interested in watching them play, and that helped to keep the interest of the male fans who are the core football audience. But in the WNBA, it looks like they are trying to appear better than the NBA without putting actual skill and character into consideration. Their priorities barely align with what's necessary to keep anyone interested. They don't care about improving their game individually, they detest feedbacks. They have also failed to realize that sport is not an obsession for female fans as it is for men, whose attention can only be attracted by average to world-class performances. Below average performances are mostly subjects of banter, and most women's sports, WNBA included, rank beneath the banter region. At best, the WNBA could have passed as a guilty pleasure as it is with other women's sports. But the entitlement from those players just turns everyone off, making it harder to invest attention in something that's already unbearable to watch. They have motioned to prospective fans, over time, that their opinions and suggestions don't matter, while also questioning why people don't watch them play. Well, maybe it's because the WNBA has a reputation for curing acute insomnia and barely offering any real sports entertainment. But then, as long as they are getting paid by the NBA, what does it matter? Their ego towers over their talent, and they have failed to recognize that. Any suggestion to improve in certain areas of their game is viewed as an insult to their almost non-existent basketball abilities. They try to be masculine with a mix of a whole lot of drama. 1 minute they are tough, 5 seconds later they are fully in their feelings. When Shaquille O'Neal advised that certain adjustments should be made to improve the WNBA's entertainment value, response was, "Wait another generation."
10 years ago, the WNBA game was here. NBA game is here. Now it's here. I have a way to make it equal. Just listen to me now. You ready?
All right.
We've heard it.
Yeah, we've.
So in beach volleyball, the women's net is maybe half an inch lower. You think if we just lower the rim so y'all could dunk like we dunk, that'll give y'all more oomph than you already have?
No.
I mean, because listen, y'all are doing the step backs, the pull back. Y'all doing everything we're doing, but I don't see a lot of people going up with 2 hands and, back.
Oh, it's coming. Opportunities are.
So you don't think if we just drop it to 9, 10 and a half?
I guarantee. Layla, she's into dance, but my next child will be drop step dunking. I promise. I'm still there.
It almost came as a surprise when they started comparing their pay to that of the NBA, saying they were getting paid way less than the men. But then I remembered the WNBA had been diagnosed with stage 4 feminism. Symptom can be I deserve what I have not earned. I don't have to be competent to get paid. My job is to never be appealing and then show up to act like I'm doing the job. I'm convinced majority of the WNBA players do not understand why they get paid the amount that gets to them. They need not worry though. For clarity, here is a logical explanation.
The smartest choice for you to use the NBA and the WNBA for your argument. Mostly because this one is just too easy. So sit down and get your pencil and let's go through this. The NBA averages about $7.4 billion with a B in revenue every year. Now the WNBA averages about $60 million with an M. Now here it's worth noting that the WNBA is actually subsidized by the NBA because they lose an average of $10 million every year. And in 2021, they actually lost $12 million. Had this been a men's league that was losing $12 million every year, they would have shuttered it by now. But moving on. NBA players get an average of $9.6 million a year. WNBA averages about $102,000. Again, still pretty generous considering that you are losing money every year. $102,000 is not too shabby for a part-time job. On to viewership. NBA, $12.4 million. WNBA, $412,000. So we know that the revenue split for the NBA is about 50%. The WNBA revenue split is around 20%. Now, if they were generating more income or even breaking even, then their salary and their percentages would probably go up. Women's League is actively trying to get a new collective bargaining agreement, and not only are they looking for a 53% pay raise, they want full-time maternity leave, $5,000 a year in childcare expenses, and up to $60,000 for adopting a child, surrogacy, fertility treatments. So does that actually sound like we're looking for the same thing, or are we looking for a little bit more? And as far as equality goes, I don't see the women's players beating down the door to play the same number of games as men. Men play 82 games a year, and the women playing 34. The women only play 10 minutes a quarter when the men play 12 minutes a quarter. The women's basketball is actually 1 inch smaller and 2 ounces lighter. And their three-point line is almost 2.5 feet closer to the rim. But they're not demanding to have all of those things moved to be the same as the men's games. This whole subject is quite irritating to me because I had 2 WNBA tickets to a game in my truck. Somebody broke into my truck, and now I have 4.
If the WNBA starts selling courses on how to fail upwards, they will end the season with massive profits. But they just lack any business sense at all.
In fact, WNBA players are not underpaid at all. They are, if anything, vastly overpaid. By all rights, as a simple economic matter, WNBA players should not be getting paid anything. If they're getting paid anything above 0, they are overpaid. They're still overpaid because although the WNBA generates $60 million in revenue, or even if it's $100 million, let's say, it makes no profit. These women are getting paid salaries to play for a league that, economically speaking, shouldn't exist. You don't have to be a financial whiz to understand that losing money for 30 years is usually a recipe for bankruptcy. The only reason the women's league stays open is that the NBA subsidizes it. Every year, the men's league hands millions of dollars to the women. And why do they do that? Well, so that everyone can feel good about the fact that a women's league exists.
Now, I've got one question for you guys. If you heard a bank was losing millions every year since it was founded, how much of your money would you put in their custody? Another problem with the WNBA is delusion. They came together, had a small discussion, and came to the conclusion that a certain Britney, hidden in plain sight Griner, had gained some star power after she was used as a subject of a prisoner swap deal between Russia and the US. Her crime, you ask?
Hours ago, Russia freed WNBA star Britney Griner in a prison swap with the US, releasing a Russian arms dealer. I think that Russia have proven, once again, that they are smarter than the United States. Britney Griner is a criminal. She carried marijuana into Russia, which has very strict drug smuggling laws. I would have been perfectly happy for that woman to stay in jail for the rest of her natural life. I think that Russia got a fucking whale of a deal by getting back their dangerous arms dealer. Enjoy your arms dealer back. Oh, don't worry, we have a WNBA star. As though anyone watches the WNBA anyway. Who knew who Brittany Griner was before this happened?
After a session of deluding themselves, the team management of Phoenix Mercury decided to capitalize on Griner's newly acquired fame to sell out matchday tickets. I'm glad to tell you, they realized that this is not reality TV, but basketball, which is what fans care about.
It was great, but like honestly, come on LA, like we didn't sell out the arena for BG. Like I expected more, you know, to be honest, right? Like it was great, it was loud, but how was it not a sellout? How was it not a sellout?
It was not a sellout because you brought out a lie and try to convince the customer that what you're holding is the truth. Proper snake oil salesman tactic. If you were to measure the weight of delusion of those who brought up the idea, or even had the thinking that anyone was interested in watching Brittany Griner play basketball for even a second, everyone would run out of scales, guaranteed. For all their complaining about the fact that no one watches the WNBA, you would think they'd be joyful when an opportunity to change things come to them. No, they came together to complain about the color of the package. The savior they were expecting came with a different aesthetic. Now, the emergence of Caitlin Clark has been one, packed with revelations. One being that a woman can play real basketball. Two, the already established WNBA players never wanted any growth to come to the league, especially one that would force them to step up their game, and keep them from getting paid for only ever complaining about getting overpaid. She is currently the most talked about thing in the world of basketball. The interest in everything Caitlin Clark is so much that at the time of making this video, the NBA Finals was going on and the games barely made headlines. But the one problem she's facing is, the WNBA doesn't want her. Since coming to limelight, all we've heard and seen from current and former players, including some of her teammates, is how they don't want her simply because she threatens to make them all look like entry-level basketballers that they actually are. From hostile welcome messages from a washed 42-year-old who should be retired, to protection of records by former players with messages like, "It doesn't matter how many times you break my record, it's still my record."
We like to be right. If I'm right and you're wrong, I don't have to change. And so that's pretty convenient for me because change, there's a desert part of change. Like if I have to change, I have to fall apart and then I have to put myself back together. It's very annoying to fall apart. You know, if you're arguing with your wife and it turns out you're wrong, then you have to go figure out why you're wrong. God only knows why you're wrong. And so people will insist that they're right so they don't have to change. Because change involves sacrifice, change involves death. When you learn something new, the stupid part of you has to go and it has to die. And that's actually painful. You might have put a lot of work into that stupid part of yourself, you know, and then you have to let it go. And then it's not like like I said, it's not like you're better as soon as you let it go. It's no, you're just lost on that front. Then you have to figure out what to do instead. In the religious orientation, what you try to do is you try to replace insisting that you're right with trying to find out how to be right. And that's the opposite of pride. That's humility.
The WNBA hates change. They like things the way they were before Caitlin Clark showed up on the scene. They only ever complained for the sake of complaining. They understand why no one cares to watch their games and they are not interested in doing anything about it. People have come up with various reasons why the WNBA hates Caitlin Clark. From my observation though, the league is comfortable wallowing in obscurity because if no one is watching, no one would see that they barely play basketball. Caitlin Clark has brought unwanted spotlight to a league that can only function in the dark. So the moment everyone saw Caitlin Clark play and started talking about her, the league went into panic mode. The only thing on their minds was, we are about to be exposed. But for sport fans, this is what we have been waiting for. Finally, we can watch female basketball without dying of cringe from seeing Brittany Griner try to force a dunk with opposition defense cheering her on. Caitlin Clark currently plays as a point guard for the Indiana Fever. Born on January 22, 2002, in Des Moines, Iowa, she is regarded as one of the greatest collegiate players of all time. Clark played college basketball for the Iowa Hawkeyes, where she became the NCAA Division I all-time leading scorer and was a two-time National Player of the Year. During her college career, she earned numerous accolades, including the AP Player of the Year, Honda Sports Award, John Wooden Award, and Naismith College Player of the Year, among others. She was selected first overall by the Indiana Fever in the 2024 WNBA draft. Clark is known for her exceptional scoring ability, court vision, and leadership on the court. She possesses qualities that the WNBA can't seem to comprehend, hence the unnecessary outrage by current and former WNBA players. She is currently the most popular female basketballer ever, and she's only a few games into her rookie year, not because of her skin color. According to this.
And I do think that there is a thing called pretty privilege. There is a thing called white privilege. There is a thing called tall privilege. And we have to acknowledge that. And so part of it is about race, because if you think about the Brittany Griners of the world, you know, why did she have to go to play in Russia?
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay, not because she was black, but because they didn't believe in the WNBA.
This is part of my point. So now, you know, Caitlin Clark is bringing this money, these sponsorships, we hope, into the league, and other players will benefit from it. But I do think that she is more relatable to more people because she's white, because she's attractive. And unfortunately, there still is that stigma against the LGBTQ plus community. 70% of the WNBA is black. A third of the players are in the LGBTQ plus community. And we have to do something about that stigma.
Trust the women of The View to say things that'll never make sense. Regardless of the fact that she's the single reason people are talking about the WNBA, she is experiencing the hostility that was promised her even before she was drafted. Clark is likely to break a lot of records that seem to be the only thing noteworthy for certain ex and current players. In their game against Chicago Sky, a certain unknown saw an opportunity to catch some fame. She did it in the most WNBA manner, and dream came true for the unknown as her name was finally mentioned. Not only does Clark fill up stadiums with her star power, she causes others to shine too.
Like everybody's because of Caitlin Clark. And the other girls in the league are delighted for her success. I'm joking, of course. They fucking hate her, and they've been... Show the tape if we're getting body checked. This is a game the other day, and I mean, that was pretty deliberate. And look at the other girl on her team coming over. See, if this was men, they defend each other on their same team. I mean, men will fight from two teams, but when somebody checks you on who's on your team, you defend that guy. I'm just saying, men have their bad parts. We're toxic. We're dogs. But only women would do this. Well, women are catty, even the ones on her own team. Matt Barnes, he said, my question and my issue is, where the fuck are her teammates at? I've seen a couple of girls smirk when she's got knocked down, half-assed to pick her up. You guys are supposed to be a family. If your guy's fucking job to have her, it's your guy's fucking job to have her back and have each other's back.
To confirm their lack of knowledge on how to run a sports organization, the body or people in charge of the USA women's basketball team announced the roster for the upcoming Olympics, and sure enough, Caitlin Clark was left out. As expected, fans were not having it.
Heard by now, Caitlin Clark did not make the women's Olympic team, and I have to say, that's an absolute joke. I mean, how ridiculous is it to leave off the most famous female basketball player in the history of the sport off the women's Olympic team? I don't think the women's Olympic team has lost a game in something like 30 or 40 years. You could send out a college all-star team. They would still win every game by 20-plus points, let alone you put any WNBA players against any other women's team in the world. They're going to absolutely blow them out of the water. Caitlin Clark isn't just the most famous women's basketball player in America. She's one of the most famous athletes in America, period. In fact, other than, I guess, maybe LeBron James, 2 or 3 other NBA players, I don't think there's been a basketball player in the country that's been talked about more than Caitlin Clark. And yet the women's team is apparently so stupid and so unaware of how you get eyeballs on the sport that they left the biggest, most famous player in the game off the Olympic roster. If you put Caitlin Clark on the Olympic roster, women's Olympic basketball immediately, overnight becomes must-watch television, just like every other game Caitlin Clark is in. She just played in D.C. They sold over 20,000 tickets to a WNBA game in D.C. to watch 2 teams who have like a combined 3 wins on the season. You put her on the Olympic team, and all of a sudden the women's Olympic team becomes the center of attention at the Olympics for the United States of America. But this is what it comes down to. Jealousy and envy. These women hate her. They don't want anything to do with her. And even though she's elevated all their platforms, they would rather have nobody care about them winning another gold medal than put Caitlin Clark on that team. Again, you might think she's a top 5 player, top 10 player, top 15, 20, whatever. Doesn't really matter. She's the most famous women's basketball player in the history of women's basketball. And there ain't a close second. She was playing nationally televised games in college. She's dominating and rewriting the record books for ratings in the WNBA. She's selling out every arena she steps foot in. And these women are so stupid and short-sighted that they wouldn't put her on the Olympic team. The only thing you had to do to make the Olympic team a must-watch, pencil it in your calendar event, was put Caitlin Clark on the team. And who's ever running the show is so damn stupid and so full of, I guess, resentment, envy, jealousy, whatever it might be, that they said, no, let's not put the most famous player in America on the team for whatever reason. Let's not do that. We don't want people watching these games, right? We don't want anyone watching. We want nobody paying attention. Leave Caitlin Clark at home.
All right, I'm at Saratoga Belmont Day, looking spectacular per usual, shoes, bang. But this is about Caitlin Clark being left off the Olympic team. How dumb are these women? How dumb? I don't know who's making the decision, Women's Olympic Committee, whatever it is. I don't care if you don't think Caitlin Clark, talent-wise, belongs on this team, even though she does put up 37 to 13, like the most points in the history of the league for a rookie. None of it matters. These women, and I love women. I'm a pro-woman guy, women guy. They complain and they cry about equal rights, equal wages, blah, 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 blah. Hey, dummies. For the first time, like in the history of basketball, you have arguably a player who is the most popular player in the world. Like, you could argue right now, Caitlin Clark is the most talked about, discussed, most popular, most puts asses in the seats, single basketball player in the world. You could argue that. Yeah, you could say maybe LeBron, Luka, whatever you want, but you can argue it. And you leave her off the Olympics team, it's not only a showcase for her, it's for the sport and the other WNBA players who are on this team. How dumb, how brain dead, how idiotic do the people running this thing have to be? It was one thing after another with her. How, I at the business part of my brain is like, these people, and maybe it's a guy who did, whoever it is, I don't ever want to hear you complain about flying commercial or not getting salaries or this, that. You're too dumb. You're too dumb. You have a cash cow. This can bring the Olympic basketball, women's basketball will be like the number one thing people watch with Caitlin Clark. As it is, I'd rather watch grass grow. I'd rather watch paint dry. I'd rather watch dirt just be moved around. Because Caitlin Clark's not on the team. If she's there, it's appointment TV. You people, whoever did this, honestly, hey, take your brain, put it in a museum, and study it for how dumb you are.
In the earlier stages of this video, I stated how sport is predominantly a men's thing. Part of it is that sporting activities and decisions are devoid of emotions, which is a factor that has aided in maintaining growth in the male section. Now, the female section of the game is run predominantly by emotions and a careful consideration of people's feelings, which has helped in slowing down progress over the years. So, in response to fans crying out about Caitlin Clark not making the roster for the 2024 Olympics, the national basketball body gave a reason for excluding Caitlin Clark from the Olympic team. You guessed it. They are making sure to protect the feelings of the millions of people supporting Caitlin Clark, trying to prevent outrage from us the fans if she doesn't have adequate game time at the Olympics, totally neglecting the business aspect of the entire situation. Let's be real, we can all guess whose feelings they are trying to pamper. It's definitely the same old jealous, overrated, so-called established players who cannot stand Caitlin Clark's presence in the same locker room as the. Thing is, the WNBA has been in the void all of its existence. God looked at their situation and said, "Let there be light," and Caitlin Clark emerged. Those players in the league had gotten used to the darkness, so much so that the moment they saw light approaching, they couldn't comprehend it. All of the jealousy and empty pride are just components of the perpetual darkness the WNBA has been in for so long. But not to worry, Caitlin Clark, the light of the league, is here to stay. And with all of this influence and star power about her, we are likely to see more Caitlin Clarks in the next generation. What the League of Extraordinary Bitter Women should know is, when you're offered a cash cow, you don't kill it, you milk it.